And I've also been working still on the Devil's Bible, which is still in progress.
Yeah.
I am almost done. Well, almost done is an exaggeration, but I'm almost done with the entire book of Genesis, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that's a classic book.
Classic book. It might stop there. It might be Genesis plus greatest hits. It might be Genesis and Exodus, but we're at least halfway there.
Well, that's great because we're going to be talking about a story from Genesis in part today.
Yep. I'm in Chicago right now. Is there anything that you guys want me to get while I'm here for you?
The bean.
The whole
bring
thing?
it back. Heist it.
Acquire the Cloud Gate, Carmen Sandiego style. Just like take the whole thing.
Yes. Live up to my hometown's namesake and steal that bean.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the Worst of All Possible Worlds, the first and only podcast willing, ready, and able to steal that bean. I'm the worst of all possible Joshes.
I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
And I'm the worst of all possible Brians.
And joining us once again, we have a fan favorite, somebody who I know that many of you listening to this are just going to be really thrilled to hear from again. It is the one, the only, the inimitable Lev Novak.
Hey, thanks for that introduction. I don't know about inimitable. I feel like I'm pretty minutable, but we'll figure that out.
I've never tried, but
we'll adjust that inimitability in post if we have to. My pronunciation. Yeah, exactly.
All right, Brian, that's a no for Brian right there. Dial in the imitability.
Just hit the button for that.
Perfect.
Now I can't even say the word anymore.
There you go.
I mean, it's the one that always trips me up when I'm singing Hamilton. Inimitable. So, I can't do it. I simply can't do it.
You gotta let the rhythm work for you.
That's right. The rhythm is going to get you.
Yes, because when you look at me, I scream rhythm.
So, I mean, what I'm excited about here, not only do we have Lev back on, we have Lev back on to go once more into the wild and woolly world of Odyssey.
Yeah.
We've got 4 real fucking banger episodes this week.
Lev, can I ask, what about listening to 4 episodes of Odyssey made you be like, you know what? I would like 4 more episodes of Odyssey.
I would say definitely it's helpful to see how Christian entertainment talks about these stories as somebody trying to reframe the discussion. It's really interesting to sort of get the other approach. And also, frankly, it's the barrier of entry of hanging out with you guys on this wonderful podcast.
Oh my God. Say less, Lev. Joe, just keep it coming.
I'd walk 1,000 miles with Whitaker in my ear,
And I would walk 5,000 more just to be the man hanging out with Lev Novak on a podcast. So
that's right.
The first episode, then, we might as well just get right into it because, I mean, if you're listening to this already, you probably know the drill. This is Whit's Endless Summer, a ongoing sub-series of the Worst of All Possible Worlds where we listen.
Summer just gets hotter and hotter.
Oh my God, it's so fucking hot. It's actually not that hot in Chicago right now, interestingly enough, but I know in New York it's like 96 or something today?
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
I just looked out my window and 3 birds fell from the sky on fire.
In Chicago, the piano's hot.
Oh, yeah. Just a nightly brawl and all that jazz. So the first episode of Adventures in Odyssey that we have selected this week, it's always effortless with me. I got you, baby. The first adventure that we listened to this week is a Western. It's a Western entitled The Ill-Gotten Deed.
It's a Western set in Ohio, but the Western frontier started much further east.
That's why they call it the Midwest. Back in the day, it really was, part and parcel of the Western frontier.
Michigan is already kind of stretching it as far as like the term West being applied to that, but the fact that Ohio also fits into that, it's like you're not even west of the Mississippi.
Well, it is technically west of here where I am right now.
yeah, for sure.
West, that's how we gauge everything. Is like, where is it in relation to AJ Diddy?
Yeah, where.
And it's
Diddy
West
mean time is how all world time is calculated.
That's a different kind of DMT. But this particular adventure begins with Chris telling us that Calvin. By the way, who the fuck is Calvin? Who is this kid?
Calvin's one of the, because this is an early episode. This came out in 1989. It's episode 92.
Yeah.
So this is one of the precursor kids. This is where they get one of those actors who becomes a recurring actor, but not yet in the character that he's known for playing. So this is Fabio Stevens, who later plays Kurt Stevens.
Oh, okay.
But here he is as Calvin, who is the proto Kurt Stevens, basically.
Right. So Chris lets us know that Calvin is looking through the books, and he's also looking pretty angry. He's mad at his brother, I guess, because they share a room, and his brother's just being a real shit.
His brother plays tricks on him, so he's looking for a book of tricks.
Now, I speak as a guy with a brother here. Brian, I know you have a brother.
I also have a brother.
Lev, I know you have a brother.
I have two brothers.
Two brothers.
That's right.
You have one brother twice.
I don't have any.
Right. So I'm excluding you from this conversation, AJ, with the intention of asking Calvin here, do we buy his fundamental motivation? Because, we hear that his big thing is he's got this rivalry with his brother who's always sort of like doing goofs and spoofs. He's sort of manipulating the situation.
Goofs and spoofs?
Yeah.
In this economy, Josh?
Do we buy that Calvin would really be this shitty about his brother is basically my opening question for you all.
I say yes. And
absolutely.
I'll explain why. Fundamentally, Calvin sees himself, imagine him as the younger brother, and he is looking for revenge and retaliation. Ben, Jesse, don't worry. But I will also say, reading a book is also a high barrier of entry, again, to use the term. And I happen to know from my own experience that if I am arguing with a brother or I see my brother reading a book that looks good, it's one of the only reliable ways to actually get me to read something.
Sure.
So in that sense, my brother mentions a book, I will actually read it as opposed to, not reading it. So in that sense, you get something that can match your brother. That's a great incentive. You get something to beat your brother. All the better.
Yeah, it's a nice 2 for 1.
Cover.
Yeah,
exactly.
And in this book, Whit, as per usual, is fucking like, oh, I've got the best solution for this. So he finds Calvin a book that's really going to help him get one over on his brother, except not.
This is a very loud library. I just want to say there's a lot of noise in the library at Whit's
The coughing in the background made me very nervous.
There's so much coughing. It was so maddening.
Well, it's a smoking library, guys. It's 1989.
All the kids Odyssey lighten up, reading Huckleberry Finn.
Whit came out really strongly against the Odyssey anti-smoking ordinance. So, this book, Whit suggests a book. It's called The Ill-Gotten Deed. Apparently, Whit wrote it himself. Because, fuck it. Why not?
Yeah, Whit's an author.
So we end up in Richmond, Virginia in the early 1800s. There's some really boring
I've got some of this opening narration here.
And Horace and Grover found themselves at the law offices of one Ambrose P. Schnook.
Mr. Schnook?
Huh? Who's that?
Why, it's me, Horace. Yes, and Grover.
Oh, good. For a minute there, I thought I was seeing double.
So Grover is Nathan Carlson, our good friend who plays Richard Maxwell.
Yeah.
And Horace is played by Louis C.K. This is Horace and Pete's. This is the bar that he runs with Steve Buscemi. No, it's
that's really funny, Brian. That's a great joke.
Alan Alda plays Snook. Everyone laugh.
It's me. I'm the laugh. I'm the guy who's here for all your Alan Alda and Horace and Pete jokes. Anyway, so Horace is played by Charles Knox Robinson, he's an old timey TV actor. His last role might be the one that you know him for. He plays the elderly lawyer that Matthew Broderick has in The Cable Guy. Maybe that's just for me. He also, for how bad his Virginia accent is, he also played one of the Anderson sons in Shenandoah. So there we go. Who knows what's going on here?
Lev, you had mentioned before we started rolling that you had some thoughts about these two brothers and their accents.
I do. First of all, I am surprised that Horace is the country yokel and Grover is the, effete intellectual gentleman. It's not really how I picture those names commonly associated.
Sure.
Also, neither of them are anything close to a regular guy from the time period.
No.
Grover is this 1920s, Boston Brahmin about to do some, like little hustle. And then you have this guy who's like this slack-jawed yokel. He's like goofy. He's got the hiccups.
Yeah.
He's constantly bamboozled. And it feels like Grover, not to, victim blame, but Grover really is just seeing a pretty big opportunity. I imagine, like, among other things, not to spoil anything, Horace left his lockbox in his brother's house?
Yeah.
I feel like that's a little bit asking for it.
For sure. So just to really clear sort of what the setup is here. Yeah, you've got Grover and Horace, and the two of them are identical twin brothers, right?
But they couldn't be more different.
That's right, Brian. And
just like Tia and Tamara.
So they turn 30, and when they turn 30, their dad dies. And he wills them a property. However, the trick of it is he's not willing it to them jointly. Instead, it's a competition for some reason. The two of them need to see who can make it west the fastest in order to lay claim to the property, acquire the deed. And I guess there's just a guy who's out there waiting for them to show up.
It's a rat race situation.
Yeah. The father is played by John Cleese with a spray tan.
It's become a game. I guess their father had a lot of money and property, obviously, and he spent a lot of money on some property that ends up not being very worthwhile. But these sons don't have much. So Grover, the smart one, the urbane trickstery guy, he's just renting a place, but Horace has property.
He's very good at farming.
Even though Grover is the one with like everyone's documentation and birth certificates and shit.
Yeah, Grover has a whole house, and he's is spending $80,000 to remodel a large section of the house. He's constructing it entirely on his own, using parts from the Home Depot. I'm saying that it's a Grover house.
That's right.
There it is.
Done.
Okay. Very well done.
So Horace, unlike Grover House, is much better at the outdoors, and we learn as much.
But it isn't right. Horace likes the outdoors. You don't. Your father should have left you double the money.
That's just Chris, by the way.
Some sort of handicap.
Well, he didn't. So there's no use in complaint. Wait.
Okay, so Grover is not as good at being outdoors as his brother Horace.
Right.
His identical twin brother Horace. And then he schemes to impersonate his brother to get a hold of his inheritance monies and use that to go out. He impersonates his twin brother to get the inheritance from his father. They couldn't be more different. And they,
Where are you going with this, Brian?
I don't know. It's so familiar for some reason.
Well, first of all, I want to say what we're all thinking, which is Grover's wife is a certified hottie.
Absolutely.
Her voice.
A dime.
Absolutely.
Chris is a babe. Yeah, she was the voice of Barbie for many years, actually.
Oh, man. Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what you want from your hot, evil wife. You know, like a little bit of like a pouty, like she's pouty, she's complaining, but she is ride or die.
Yeah,
for sure.
You should steal from your brother. It should all be for you. Like
bit of a Lady Macbeth kind of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Who is also another certified smoke show, as we all know. Shakespeare's notes in the comments, he was very clear on that.
Note on casting must be certified smoke show.
It's another one of those words that Shakespeare coined.
Right.
But biblically speaking, this is a total inversion of Esau and Jacob, is I think what we're talking about.
Whoa, what? There's a story in the Bible like this?
There's a story in the Bible like this.
The Holy Bible?
I thought there might be, but again, Catholics don't read the Bible, so I had no idea. Brian was doing this whole like eyebrow like waggling thing for the last 5 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, I Prince and the Pauper, right? We're all talking, it's Prince and the Pauper?
Mark Twain.
No, this is a podcast that honors the Lord, AJ. That's what we're here for.
We do not honor Mark Twain on this podcast.
That's right. This is of course that story from the Bible. Let's just talk that through real quick because that's a classic story, right?
Teach me.
Beat that out real quick.
All right. This is one of my favorite stories, and as someone who went through it in the original Hebrew, not to flex, I can tell you some very interesting things happen.
I think you said went through it in real life, and I was like, wait a second.
Yeah,
went through it in real life, also in the original Hebrew. It was really something.
Got a lot of drama going on in my life. But one thing everyone should know is Jacob and Esau. Jacob is the younger brother who ends up with the inheritance. He's the patriarch through which Judaism, Christianity, and I don't know if Islam follows that. I think they follow Ishmael.
Yeah.
But point being, if you're talking Judeo-Christian, it comes from Jacob stealing this blessing. And Jacob is Grover. Jacob is the villain in this story. It is actually a little strange and subversive the way they paper this over. And the way a lot of times you will hear justifications of, for example, when Jacob demanded Esau's birthright for the lentil stew, it's all about, well, it shows that Esau didn't value it and yada, yada. No. Jacob screwed Esau over twice, actually. Once, in order to get his birthright, which is the double share of the blessing. When, by the way, that food that Jacob was making was for Esau, the hunter who went out to get food. It was the division of labor.
It was some good-ass stew, though. I just want to be very clear about that.
Those lentils were fine.
And then, for the second time, he goes in, impersonates Esau to get his dying father's blessing.
Right.
Esau is screwed over twice, by the way, in case anyone is curious. They later reconnect. Esau forgives him completely, says, come with me, let us be brothers. Jacob says, yeah, sure, I just got to tie my shoe, basically. Runs away because he's a little coward. And that's that.
Like when they meet up, he's so cool about it.
Esau
and he's just like, you know what?
Cool.
Yeah, it's like a lot of, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it like a Christian.
Yeah.
They do an episode about Jacob and Esau much later. It's one of the episodes. It's not an Imagination Station episode. It's one where Bernard narrates it. But here is like this really interesting way that they've mapped it on, and they don't acknowledge it. The only Bible verses they reference at the end are from the letters of Paul.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's weird.
I think maybe they had Jacob and Esau in mind, and they were told we're pushing Paul this month, and they had to.
We're pushing P.
Yeah.
And by P, I mean Paul.
We got to sell that Paul merch.
The story of Jacob and Esau, classic story, right? And this one's a little bit different, the story that we're told here, because as opposed to a birthright stolen, the idea here is that they both have the potential to sort of compete on an equal playing field for that thing, right?
Right.
Yes. And it's honestly kind of a weird setup. And I don't know what they were going for with that, just from a writing perspective. I don't know. I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that.
I think they were just trying to make a Western.
Yeah.
I think they were just trying to map, sort of frontier American personality traits onto these characters. So that's why the Jacob character has to become far more scheming and has to have the wife who's also in on it and everything like that.
I also think that they kind of had to make him more sympathetic. They had to make Grover, I don't know, Odyssey couldn't, spoilers for this, Odyssey couldn't be founded by a trickster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It couldn't be founded of a trickster deal, because that would corrupt the main core of the town.
So this is Grover. He's made it to the deeded property.
What about it, Mr. Van Cleef?
Well, you can call me Silas. Well, looks like everything's in order.
I'm just a guy who's over here for some reason.
Rachel, we won!
We won? Oh, we won!
I got the deed right here. Just sign the transfer down at the bottom, and the Wayakatalaniti Valley is all yours.
Yes, I'll do it right now.
So our real Odyssey heads will recognize that name, Wayakatalaniti. We have not covered anything regarding this in this show, but there is a camp. There is a summer camp in Odyssey called Camp What-A-Nut.
Oh, yeah,
which is so named because it's taken the name Wayakatalaniti and made it into What-A-Nut. Now, Wayakatalaniti is a word from no language at all. It's completely made up. Big surprise.
Shocked.
But again, the real heads know what this means, which is land that stinks like a swamp, which is, I think, a reference to Chicago, because I think Chicago's name comes from the word for skunk.
We talked about Red Dead Redemption 2 a few weeks ago. We talked about that beautiful, lush, incredibly well-realized environment.
I got a plan, Horace.
And I just found myself in this episode just being like, wow, I can see it all in my mind. This is so clear and so specific and just so incredibly precisely realized. I'm amazed at how sharp this writing. I'm being sarcastic. It fucking sucks ass. Like the way that
so many contrivances in order to make anything happen in this episode.
You know, they try to lean on the Foley to like give you a sense of we're in the wagon, we're on the road, we're in the place. But what's interesting is that I think at this point, Adventures in Odyssey was actually already doing pretty well in like the production department. And this is really like a C tier narrative, just strictly like speaking on the technical level.
Phil Lawler did not deliver here as a writer either. It's just like, because it's just like, here are all the things that happen in Westerns, which, surprise, guess what? It's racism time.
Well, you want to tell me how it could be any worse?
That answer your question?
Oh, God.
It's amazing that this isn't even the most racist episode we're going to cover today.
Just you wait, folks. It gets even worse. So, Lev.
Boy.
First, I was surprised because this episode takes place canonically in 1967. So the terminology, the attitude was all outdated. But definitely, Gavolt. I was like, I sure hope this, among other things, I was hoping this is the most problematic episode that doesn't scale up. That was incorrect. And to be perfectly honest, I was wondering what was the biblical comparison point that they were trying to draw, the parallel. Because neither, well, sure. When we talk about the Hittites, though, speaking of the Hittites, while we're talking about Jacob and Esau, and racism, seriously, one of the very appreciated parts of why Jacob got the blessing and not Esau is Esau married a Hittite woman, and their mother said, because of these Hittite women, my life is not worth living. And that is racism.
Whoa.
It's very serious. And in fact, when Jacob is sent out, it is ostensibly so he's not killed by Esau. The excuse they give is so he finds a wife who's not a Hittite, by the way. So
interesting.
It's very interesting. The Devil's Bible touches a lot on that sort of racial dynamic and tension that you see. But
and Jacob had no trouble finding his wife whatsoever.
Obviously the bait and switch of the story.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it took him 14 years to get there because he ended up saddled with a wife that he just didn't want.
You hate when that happens. But I will also say one more thing quickly while we're doing Bible study class.
Yeah.
Laban switches out the two sisters and the two wives in the same way that Jacob switched clothing with Esau to get the blessing. So it's also funny when you see how this is treated as a terrible thing that Laban did from the outside perspective, but ostensibly he is doing this for his daughter who has an eye condition. Like an older daughter who would unlikely to get married, who famously had an issue with her eyes, which is a problem. Conjunctivitis is the current understanding of that, unmedicated, yada, yada. Laban is just being a good father the same way Jacob's mother was, being racist, but trying, to put her finger on the scale. Laban is a much better excuse.
Sure. I mean, I really like the lesson as it was drawn out in Fiddler on the Roof, which is that you're just not supposed to trust your employer.
Yeah. Especially when they're your uncle. A lot of cousin marrying going on up in here.
I think the most interesting thing that this episode could have done is have Silas be Horace in disguise. That's what I actually thought was going on.
They trick each other.
Yeah, where like Horace finally gets one over on Grover. But no, Horace just shows up and gets tricked again.
Because the whole thing about this land stinking like a swamp, it is a swamp. Once the rainy season comes in, it's like it's too wet to grow anything on. And then like cows move in, and it's just like it's not land that you can do much with, which my ancestors have a lot of experience with in Missouri. But there's also, while they're still dealing with, the marauding, wild, horrible, inhuman people who are like, you're stealing their shit. They're trying to just get rid of you.
Just to my previous point, too, of like how poorly defined this all is.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get the sense at all. This is just, these guys are just, these local natives are a sound effect. Like they're not even, there's nothing there.
And there's this one little gag that they have here that's more illuminating than I think they intended for it to be, where Silas has his gun and he just sort of fires into the air.
Wait, you missed!
know that. I don't want to hit them. I just want to scare them off. I don't believe in killing.
I don't think they share in your belief.
I don't know if we have to really say anything beyond that one.
Jesus.
It's just like, yeah, here's the good Christian people who have like views and opinions and values.
Yeah.
And they're surrounded by the wild and heathen and untamed peoples.
Yeah, it makes you wonder where all those dead Native Americans came from if they don't believe in killing so much.
Yeah.
It's also okay. So this is a question I had. Is he screaming range cattle or rage cattle?
Range.
Yeah. I thought they were just like really pissed off cows that were like storming past this place.
So the tribe gets run off by a stampede, a famously harmless thing that never killed Mufasa.
Allegedly killed Mufasa. Allegedly.
That's right.
Well, what? Are you running interference for Scar now? What is this?
Listen, all I'm saying is that you can't prove that he caused a drought. A new king can't cause that. Okay? That's a result of the previous regime.
Okay. Interesting.
And I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts.
Yeah,
okay?
I know you do, buddy. I know you do.
There's so much substance in this episode. So yeah,
this is a plot episode. This is stupid.
Yeah.
And what happens next is stupid because
so Horace led the stampede.
Yeah, like what the fuck? What is this?
Because he was so good at the outdoors, he still got there faster, even without all the money to get there. Yeah. And I keep wanting to call him Pete. Grover's like, oh, you know what? You deserve the land after all. I'll leave it to you. That's his double cross, much like Jacob had. And then he decides he's going to go back to Virginia and take over from Horace's old property, and Horace is going to be stuck with the swamp right as the rain is about to fall. However, Horace has something that Grover does not.
Swag.
Protestant work ethic.
True to form, the rains came and the whole area turned into a swamp. But while Horace wasn't too wise when it came to his brother, he was no dummy when it came to farming. He saw that the water problems could be solved simply by digging irrigation ditches in a few strategic places. He persuaded several other farmers to help him, and once the land dried out, they built themselves a town on the spot. A beautiful little community by the name of Odyssey.
Yeah, that's the thing.
What?
Those
what? He what?
Those natives. Those marauding natives, they never could have figured out something as complex as irrigation.
There wasn't anything there before,
Protestants of America, they could finally settle shit land. And let me tell you, as someone whose ancestors got some free land from the government and ended up getting it real late in the game, and so they got stuck in fucking Missouri, shit land is shit land. And if it wasn't already settled by somebody else before you got there, there was probably a fucking reason for it. Couch, Missouri is not a fertile place, let me tell you.
I have two big thoughts because this is huge, right? This is the origins of Odyssey, right? This is like, in terms of the lore heads, this is like what we've been waiting for. Like,
Odyssey,
how did this whole thing start?
And Whit's End.
Yes, and specifically Whit's End.
Becomes the, spoilers, the church that then becomes the recreation center that becomes Whit's End.
I think it's fascinating that Odyssey is the same origin story as the island from Lost.
I would have to say, ultimately, I was nonplussed. Okay. This answered a question I had never had before. So, and guess who those people are? I don't know. Some guys.
They're guys.
Like, that sounds correct.
Yeah.
The McAllisters, they left their boy home alone?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the big takeaway here that we get, the big lesson at the end of all of this, is that you have to forgive? Actually, that's what they have as a lesson?
This is how Whit puts it.
I think he understood what the Apostle Paul meant when he wrote, "Don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good."
That's why he saved his brother from the Indians?
Yes.
So, that's what Manifest Destiny was.
Yeah.
We overcame all the evil with good. Non-violently, too. We didn't believe in killing.
Yeah, we'd fire a warning shot or two.
No, we just prayed so hard we got their land.
Yeah.
You can forgive anyone as long as they're white.
Oh, God, it's just such a vile, putrid like start of it, and it's fascinating because Odyssey is supposed to be like this great, good community, and like we were talking 1776 before, it's all built on blood and death and destruction that they just kind of gloss over as nothing.
They will touch on this, I believe, in the next episode. We discuss a little bit of that legacy, which will later. Well, we'll get to that when we get to that.
So many possible worlds.
Hey folks, this is a preview of a premium episode of the Worst of All Possible Worlds, and if you want to catch the rest, you can join us over at patreon.com/worstofall. That is patreon.com/worstofall. You don't want to miss it. The Adventures in Odyssey gets more racist from here, and we later discuss the origins of the controversy around Two Live Crew's album As Nasty As They Wanna Be. And guess what? It hits a little bit closer to Odyssey than you might think, all while covering an episode that's basically just kind of a ripoff of Footloose. It's very weird, so we hope to see you there. Again, that is patreon.com/worstofall.